Cloud. And here we go. I am Andrea Gigline, and this is another episode of Still Rising. And I have the best treat today for any of you who have followed my work over the years, because you know that I spent a whole lot of time doing the Hey Boss Lady podcast with my friend and co-host, Kristi Atwater. Kristi, welcome.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm so glad to be here. It's so nice to see you.
I
It's
know.
really
I
nice to
mean,
see you. We haven't talked. It's
a
been a
long
busy
time.
time
It's been a
and a
busy
long
time,
time.
and you moved across the country.
I
And
did.
now we get to have a still rising conversation because I feel that you've had some transitions in your life of recent vintage that will really help so many people in so many ways. And then you have a whole new world to still rise with. So, Kristi, why don't you just give us the short version
Okay.
of what's happened in the last number of months?
Well, my company went through a merger and I took the company private. I had always worked
Right.
for public companies, and so then the company went private and went under a private equity. And so I knew that likely my days were numbered because I am the head of internal audits and generally,
Were you a senior VP for the company at that point?
yes, I was a
Yes, a
senior
senior
vice
VP
president.
of
And so
a,
I was the head of audit.
and
And
that company was a billion plus. What was it?
yeah, it was a billion
Publicly
dollar
traded.
company.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And it was publicly traded. And I knew that, our biggest focus was Sarbanes-Oxley. And when you're a public company, that's a big deal. When you're a company, you don't have to follow that regulation. So I knew that my days were likely numbered. And in truth, I had been there 17 years
Wow.
and was ready for kind of a change for a while. So um, now, because spoiler alert, I was let go a few weeks ago. So I had started kind of exploring my interests more.
Right.
Um, I had always loved coaching, and I worked with you, Andrea. You actually coached me for a time, but I
Yep.
also love self-improvement. So
Yep.
I got myself certified in coaching.
And I love that. And you did
Yeah.
that while you were working. That's one of the things that I really
Hmm.
appreciated about your natural development, even though you had a steady job
Hmm.
and a very, as secure as a job was going to be, um,
Hmm.
you never stopped developing out your interest and what could it look like if I wasn't here, if I was to create another life for myself.
Yeah, and I also think the other thing that I'm proud of is that I really always felt like my job could end at any moment.
Right.
Um, and that you could call that neurosis or you could call that smart, but I always
Smart.
felt that way.
Yes.
So my husband and I worked really hard. We were part of the rich dad, poor dad thing where it was like, oh yeah, use other people's money. Well,
Yep.
at some point we did a turn and we're like, you know what? We need to get out of debt, being debt free, owning your own house, owning your rental properties, not having any other debt really helped my
Unbelievable.
confidence
Mhm.
and my ability to know that we were always going to be okay
Yes.
if the tables were turned and I no longer had this job that I had
Yeah.
been doing
And
forever.
Christy, I want to interject because I know that body of work very well. And I know that you also went and spoke in front of women's group to bring that message forward. And the important thing about that body of work is that they always insisted that you live below your means so
Mhm.
that you could begin to build the foundation that you wanted. So that meant if you were joining families together, you didn't have to have your own house. You could do it 1,000 different ways. In my
Right.
terminology, I know that I was always calling it never lose the immigrant mentality, where
Oh, interesting.
yes, I have always use that terminology because what I had observed in my neighborhood, my very low to middle income neighborhood in Queens, New York, was that my parents were already the first generation here. So we were going and doing things and buying
Mhm.
bigger things, whatever you do in a low to middle income neighborhood. But when all of the waves of immigrants from the different places moved in, because we had the cheapest houses, they were living 10 to a house, the
Mhm.
same house that we would just have our family in. And I watched them one by one accumulate, and they would kind of self fund. And it was like one by one, they would be putting the next one into a house. And there were many attributes like that that I noticed. And what you did was do that for yourself. Like you got that through the work that
Mhm.
you did. And I love that the point at which you were actually going out and talking to women's groups about that, because until you experience it, you don't know how good that is.
Yeah, I mean, I even do another talk that's called Preparing for an Ethical Dilemma. And
Hmm.
one of the ways you can prepare for an ethical dilemma is you make sure that you don't need that job necessarily.
Hmm.
Like it's not a matter of feeding your family
Right,
or, doing this unethical thing. So
right.
you, so once you're in
That's
that
great. I
state of security, it's much easier to make those hard decisions and to stand up when you need to. And
absolutely.
oftentimes in careers nowadays, you have to be able to stand up
Yes,
and be able to walk out the door.
yes. I had it happen in a consulting gig, a huge consulting gig for Chrysler Motor when they were in the 90s when they were doing. And the company that hired all of us, and our job was to train the customer service program to the dealerships.
Mhm.
They had bait and switched us from the time we interviewed and changed. The per diem changed, the amount we were going to get paid in order to live, all of those things. And so I was a person when I traveled for business, if I had a power bar, I was happy. I don't go to restaurants, I don't drink cocktails, I just go home. My group consultant called me in and said, because we had a $25 at the time per diem, that I needed to put in the $25 regardless. And I was like, no, I really don't have to put in the 25 because it honestly, if the power bar cost me $3, I didn't, the $22 wasn't worth my integrity. That's how I
Right.
measured it. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Don't put yourself in those positions.
And even if nothing ever happens, you're
Hmm.
still then able, you don't get caught up in your own neurosis, right? Because
Right.
you're able to stand there in your integrity and know that you can make those hard decisions. And it
Yeah.
helps you make better decisions. You're not
Yeah.
making decisions so much out of fear.
Well, I just love that terminology, preparing for an ethical dilemma, because I
Yeah.
think you're coming up on a whole lot of things. I mean, I think you're representative of the professional class. We have an entire AI wave. Mergers
Mhm.
used to be the blame. We have another tsunami coming, and it's coming
Mhm.
after we degreed people with a vengeance.
Mhm.
That the, cutting corners in order to make market numbers. I mean, that's the ethical dilemma that many face.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I agree with you. I think AI is going to cut positions. I also think it's going to create positions. And so that's where me and you, our jobs, to
Right.
coach, people are going to have to be more agile and be
Absolutely.
used to making more transitions or more job changes. I think the old time thought process of, being with a company, even for me, like 17 years is kind of a long time
Long time.
these
Yes.
days. But I think the time frames are going to get even shorter than they were, and there might even be more like consultants short-term work, right?
And I think it's important for everyone to hear again. You started paying attention to where you may put your attentions, what you would enjoy doing in addition to this job you had. And so
Mhm.
that built your first opportunity right out. And you do have a coaching business, correct?
Yeah, I have a coaching business. It's called Boards Whisperers, and
Great.
it's coaching people who report to boards, primarily for people who are in an internal audit, but people who report to boards or are aspiring to report to boards. Um, because I realized when I was in internal audit, and you would understand this, but
Mhm.
people in internal audit report directly to the board and dotted line to the CEO. So they sit in the company, but they report to the board. And they're one of their jobs is to find out things that are wrong and could be improved on or to investigate fraud or so sometimes it's a difficult tightrope walk, right? You're
Right.
trying to improve the company, but you still need to get along with your colleagues and just a bit of a challenging situation and you're dealing with a variety of individuals, right? So navigating different personalities, sometimes
Right.
difficult, sometimes not difficult, but so anyhow, I always and I can't say I always, but there was times when I relied on coaches to help me navigate some of those challenges, if even to figure out how to, navigate a discussion or even, get a raise. And I
Sure.
think you helped me with that. And so had I worked with coaches more, I
Mhm.
think my experience would have been better. And I want to provide that to others.
That's great.
So I want to use my wisdom
Yep.
that I've learned from all those years of being in that field, but also use my coaching techniques to also help,
Yeah.
which I didn't have necessarily when I was in those positions. And then
That,
another side thing is, I'm a female, and when I started,
no, really?
yeah, when I started, and I was in the boardroom at a very young age, like at 25, 30. And at the time I noticed, and I worked for like a shipping company, and so at the time I was like, oh, I'm the only female, and I'm like, oh, well, that's just because it's a shipping company or whatever. So I just kind of kept my head down, did my job. But 25 years later, and throughout my career, when I'd look up and around, I still was the only woman, and I had worked for a variety of different companies that weren't necessarily male dominated,
right.
but and and so I started to realize that maybe women have a few more challenges than some of their male counterparts.
Yeah.
Um, Not to mention minorities, right? Like,
Yeah. Always having lived on the opposite side of that as an observer, being married to someone who was always on publicly traded boards. I had observed the way those board members, it was really, you could call it a good old boys club. And I would also say it was a relationship club, that
mhm,
they were just constantly building relationships with each other. So when you look to fill something, you look to fill it with a relationship that you felt comfortable with because you knew you were going to have to negotiate things and get
right,
approval.
right.
So, you don't look for your enemies, the unknown. So I don't think it was as it the system was definitely set in place.
Mhm,
And breaking through that system, as you have experienced in the last 25 years, I mean, yes, there are now board members, more females, more people of color on
mhm,
boards than there were before. But is it representative of education and experience for that? No, it's nowhere
right,
near it, nowhere near it. And, between this is where tenure also, it is very common to stay on a board 10 and 15 years. Very
right,
so
right.
that in itself makes it, that's another one of the challenges. But I think, and Kristi, you will remember Dr. Hannah Valentine that we
Oh, yes.
interviewed, right? So here
Hmm.
is a Black African heart transplant surgeon, and it was because she looked through the lens, she observed that people of color were dying of transplants at a higher rate.
Hmm.
Well, that's how come she could then have the medical advances that she was able to create with her teams. You have seen the boards, you have
Hmm.
seen the structure, and that's why I think you are so well suited to help someone, one, learn how to present and get over the anxieties and the considerations when you're presenting to boards, but then to also help broaden and
Hmm.
build those relationships of trust so that as seats become available, you know, you can help with all that good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So it's exciting. I also, as part of kind of a creative thing I did, is I had something that's called performing a life audit. And it's using the tools and techniques that companies use to examine their business, but on your own life. And
Hmm.
so it's kind of fun. And so people would relate to that who were in corporate America, who maybe
Right,
were in the accounting field or audit field. But it's basically, doing a risk assessment of your life. So analyzing your life. And
right.
then it's what controls do you have in place to help your life in those areas and what risks to those controls. And then also where are there gaps? What other things can you put in place? And then how do you measure it? How are you monitoring and how are you measuring it? And
That's
then
now,
you
did you
use that.
formalize this in a package or is
Yeah, I did a presentation called Perform a Life Audit to the
okay?
Institute of Internal Auditors. And so
Great,
they're experts at, performing audits and looking at
right,
controls and risks and so forth. And so it resonated with them. And, honestly, I kind of wish I would have thought of this earlier in my career because, we know how to do that, but I just never considered turning it on my own life.
right.
And it just makes sense. It's like, well, what's
You just reminded me of a beautiful moment in my Don't Die series in the second book with Gary Russo. Um, his moment of realizing, and he was kind of in a hole of his life, and he was a construction worker, and he worked for a huge Kiewit, a huge construction company building bridges and subways. And he was in a meeting where they were going through the process of the goals they had to make to build this bridge. And Gary tells the story on how listening to that process and being told how you had to keep stretching no matter what it was. And he finally realized that if he could build a bridge that way, he could build his life that way.
Oh, that's cool.
And you had that experience. That's what is so wonderful about every experience we have. Like you spent 17 years in one type of environment, being a CPA, like there is so much that applies to how you develop
Hmm.
economic wealth, life structure, everything that it is so you are such a beautiful example of how you're using different life experiences and creating new opportunities for yourself and others.
Well, thank you. And I feel like, I was thinking about this, and it's interesting, Andrea. Like, I don't know if I appreciated the coaching that you did as much when it was than I do now. It's like looking back, I'm like, oh, you know what? Andrea helped me with that. You know what? Andrea helped me with that. And then even now, I like doing the podcast with you, watching your mind as an entrepreneur work.
Right.
It was very it really taught me a lot and it gave
Thank
me
you.
kind of some guideposts to kind
Yeah.
of measure against and
Yeah.
helped me kind of gave me an example on how to move forward.
Thank you. I'll speak to the first part. Honestly, I believe that's part of the process because you're under stress. You're being pushed to think of different ways of doing how you did things. So it's, that line, you get angriest at the people you're closest to.
Hmm.
That just becomes part of that resistance. I represent the resistance. The role
Hmm.
represents that resistance. And I got used to that early on in my existence. The second part that I would say that we both experience in this conversation shows it. Every person you're with and every experience adds to the potential of what you can do and what you can do next.
Hmm.
And you don't see it at the time.
Right, right.
But it is like if you thought back on the salary negotiations that you went through and how you up leveled them during the time we worked together, you're now taking that and putting it on steroids for the next because you already walked that path and it's so comfortable.
Right,
It's
right.
easy to understand. I remember not just you, for almost all of my female clients, I've had to say at one point or another, I'm going to tell you, the men in that company wouldn't be asking that question. That training program you want to go to that you're going to pay for?
Right,
They don't pay for their training program.
right.
Like all that kind of stuff is the type of thing that if you have a coach to go through the
Mhm.
conversation with first, you've begun to work through your own personal resistance and concerns about presenting what you know to be right for the situation.
Right.
Yeah,
And a coach, like, well, it's kind of the same thing. A coach really helps you move beyond your beliefs, your limiting beliefs,
correct.
and can really help you navigate through them. And sometimes, those are hard and strong beliefs, and it really takes,
Yeah,
some tools and some help from outside to be able to even see that they're a belief and, could possibly not be true.
yeah. One of the last areas I want to talk to you about is your optimism towards AI and
Hmm.
the reconfiguring of jobs. Because in the Unicorn Challenge this year, which was big goals, the requirement was you had to use AI no matter what your job was. And no matter what you were thinking of doing, you had to use one of the various AIs to constantly help refine and think through.
Hmm.
That's a cute little exercise, but this is reality.
Hmm.
So how are you helping people? What are you seeing? What's the optimism you're seeing around this from a job perspective?
Well, I just feel like having AI allows people to learn things in a exponential way. And some of the things that I struggle with to move forward in life, it's because I I sometimes don't know how to do something.
Hmm.
The how stops me. And
Okay.
I can ask AI how to do almost anything. And it tells you, and it will even give you a step-by-step guideline. So it just allows you to work faster and to gain intelligence quicker
Right.
and move faster.
Okay.
And it's still not human though. Like
No.
that's why people say that, oh, AI is going to take away everything, but it's not because people still need connection. And
Yeah,
I do feel like people are craving connection right now.
right. And for 25 years, I have said that the higher the tech, the higher the touch. I don't know what the jobs look like, but more interaction. Yeah, like I had a funny little example this week. I use an online spreadsheet for budgeting and things called Tiller HQ. And I am not, unlike you, I can't work with spreadsheets. Just I can't write the formula. Well, I can't because I never took the time to learn it. And then I get nervous if I'm cutting and chopping and all of this stuff. So lo and behold, after 4 years, they've come out with a pilot program where, for a very nominal amount for 3 months, they will work with you and your spreadsheets to achieve the objectives you want to cultivate the process that you want. And I thought that's exactly, they know that people need interaction. Yeah, there is this huge swath of people who don't when it comes
Mhm.
to spreadsheets. And then there's this huge swath that do.
Mhm.
And I do believe that I am not sure what the jobs are yet, especially from the transition of professionals, degreed professionals, at the same rate. But I do know that AI will be the companion to doing it better
Mhm.
once it's all comes out there. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we've all heard this that AI can get it wrong. And so you still need critical thinking skills and people to challenge it. And so, you know,
My best days are when I'm fighting with chat.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
I,
Wait, that doesn't
I,
sound right.
well, no, I had a great example early on where I use quotes a lot in my work, and I needed quotes on each one of the values in the VIA, and they
Hmm.
kept giving me dead men. I mean, I would get Steve Jobs quotes, I would get George Washington quotes, I would get Abraham Lincoln quotes. So I finally kept asking it. I want women who quotes about courage from women who are still alive. And it would give me another Steve Jobs quote or something
Oh
like that.
my
It's like,
gosh.
Steve Jobs was a man when he was alive, but he's dead. Try again. And but you have to be in a mood to go through the
Right.
process. But okay, I just want so before we sign off, you are clearly still rising.
Thank you.
If everything goes gorgeous for the next 12 months, what's it going to look like when we have this conversation next December?
Well, I think I will have restarted a podcast,
Okay.
maybe our podcast.
And you've got a
Um,
studio. I know you've got a beautiful studio.
yeah, and also I will be doing some workshops. I think some perform a life audit workshops where
Great.
I'll build like a community to help continually kind of examine your life and work through that. I'll have
Great.
more coaching clients. I'll have some corporate coaching clients. I will have started uh, my book, my children's book. So I have a coloring book. Well, I
I
want to
do. I
do the
bought them.
children's book
Yep.
and do some more children's books. So I'll have more art in my life, and so yeah, it should be an exciting time. And I'm expecting to be happier and more vibrant. And you'll be like, wow, you're reverse aging. That would be great.
Yes, that is the ageless edge, and that is how
Yeah.
we do it, and that's why we keep still rising. The one thing that I say about still rising, you could be 80, you could be 90, you could be 70, you could be 30. It's all about mindset. It is all about the goals I mean, a goal at my house for my husband at 91 is walking around the island 20 times. That's honestly a huge achievement. Not my
Hmm.
achievement, but it's his.
Yeah.
And it is setting those things out and knowing that there is something you can do. So, Kristi, I am so glad that we got to do this. This is Kristi Atwater. Tell everyone where they can be in touch with you.
Well, right now it's LinkedIn, so you can look at
Great.
Kristen Atwater and you can reach out to me via message or Calendly. You could book a discovery
Beautiful.
call.
Okay.
I will coming soon. I'll have a website,
Okay.
which will be boardswhispers.com.
Great.
So that's coming soon.
Great.
Um,
Great.
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that people could get in touch with you because I really do believe that those 17 years and then all the years that came before it are really going to be such a critical gift to the people that you get to work with. And I just congratulate you on this next phase.
Well, thanks. Thanks for being my friend
Yes.
and for coaching me in the past and being someone I can look up to and follow in their path.
Well,
Um,
thank you. So that is Kristi Atwater. She is still rising. I am Andrea Gigline. As I've said it at the beginning and end of every one of these episodes so far, trust me, what this is this year is not what it's going to be next year. But I thank you for joining us. And I'll make sure that Kristi's actual LinkedIn address is in the description of the show. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you in the next episode.